Hello friends, welcome to Evita Cooks, and today I'm answering some questions about the benefits of soaking beans. And if you would like a more in-depth tutorial of the many benefits of soaking grains and beans, leave your comments below the video with your request and we'll see what we can put together for you. These garbanzo beans have been soaking for about a week in my refrigerator, and I thought it would be the perfect visual example of how easy it is to soak your beans without any effort. As you can see, they have soaked up most of the liquid and have grown quite a bit. I believe I started with about 2.5, maybe 3 cups of dry garbanzos. I'll have to check my notes, and then what I'll do is I'll leave it either on the screen or below the video in the description box. But as you can see, they have plumped up quite nicely. And one of the things that I like about using this method, for starters, is because it cuts down in the cooking time, especially if you're going to be using the garbanzo beans to make a stew, or if you're going to be using them in a salad. This is actually my preferred method. Using this method, I realized that it actually cuts down in the cooking time by about half, and sometimes even more than half the time. Before I open the jar, I just want to show you the garbanzos. Because I've kept them in the refrigerator for about a week, one of the phenomena that happen during this process is that what we end up with is some form of a fermentation process. Even though they're not fermented per se, to a certain degree they undergo a fermentation process, which is actually very good. Recently I was asked why I purchased my beans in the dry form, because I guess most people are under the assumption that dry beans take longer to cook, which is partially true. However, you do lose a lot of those good benefits when you buy the can, aside from the fact that canned beans, just like all canned goods, are loaded with preservatives, salt, and things that you really don't need in your diet. So why not give your dry beans, or in this case the dry garbanzos, a try and try to figure out different methods that work for you, just like I did, because in reality it's not complicated at all. So what I did is I washed my dry garbanzos and rinsed them, and then I put them in this jar with some purified water. That's very important. Try to use bottled water, purified, even distilled water for these types of projects, because unfortunately city tap water contains a lot of chemicals that may in fact spoil your beans in the process. And then I added a little bit of my homemade pineapple vinegar to this one, and just a little touch of baking soda, and basically that's about it. The first couple of days, I have to be very honest with you, I had to keep a plate underneath the jars, because that's when the fermentation process was the most active. And please don't get me wrong, when I'm talking about fermentation, we're not talking about making vinegar or even wine for that matter. We're talking about a very mild fermentation process that naturally occurs, because garbanzos, just like everything else, ferments, but garbanzo for some reason are very active and they ferment very quickly. So I've been doing a lot of experiments with the many ways that we can use garbanzo beans to add to our ferments, but that's a video for another time. Now basically, once I added the baking soda, the vinegar, and the water, I put a lid on my garbanzo beans, labeled it, because that's key to any type of ferments that we make, and I kept it in the refrigerator up until today. And I want to show you, because even when I agitate the garbanzo beans, you can probably see it, but there is some bubbles that form. Maybe I can bring you closer, but check it out. It is bubbling. That means that it's active, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now let's talk very briefly about the different benefits of fermenting or soaking your beans before you cook them. One of the reasons why I do it is because I like to challenge myself, number one. Number two, because I grew up in a home where my mother hardly ever bought canned anything, and therefore we learned how to prepare and process dry goods every time, especially dry beans. And honestly, for me, it's just a common practice. I actually believed in my heart growing up that everybody did it this way. Now, my mom did not put into practice fermentation, at least not intentional, because even now when I talk to her, there's certain things and processes that she explains to me that are very familiar to me and sound a lot like fermentation, but in her book and the way that she was taught, or the way that she learned She wasn't even aware of the whole fermentation process, or even the canning process for that matter. And to answer the question I said I would answer in this vlog, the reason why, or at least the primary reason why I soak beans, in this case the garbanzo beans, is because it helps to increase digestibility. Why is that important? Well, it's important because the outer coating of a variety of beans contains sugars, and guys, I'm gonna do my best to pronounce this word, but in any event, if I fail in doing so, I will leave it on the screen and also in the description box below so you can look it up. And those sugars are called oligosaccharides. I hope I pronounced that well, but if I didn't, like I said, it's right on the screen. What do you want from me? I'm bilingual and I do my best. When beans are soaked, these sugars can bypass your stomach and your small intestine without being fully digested. And that's crucial because when these sugars enter your large intestine, bacteria breaks them down, producing intestinal gas in the process. And by soaking the beans, in this case the garbanzo beans, it helps to dissolve the membranes that cover the beans and releases their oligosaccharides. And by soaking them and rinsing them, we remove the sugar. There's a lot of people that don't realize that sugar is in just about everything that we eat. But there is different ways that we can break down those sugars to help in that digestive process. So that's one of the ways that you can do that with your beans. I've heard a number of people that stay away from eating beans for that same reason. And I guarantee you that the reason why they don't eat it is because they're not aware that there is different ways that you can help fix that problem. So soaking your beans is very important. Aside from the fact that there is a lot of health benefits to it, besides removing the sugar, there's other benefits to it, especially when you use this method of bringing the beans to a semi-fermentation state. Soaking the beans removes contaminants, field dust, pesticides, and any additives that may have been added before transport. It also reduces the phytic acid, and phytic acid is basically a compound found in legumes and grains that may reduce the viability of zinc and other minerals, therefore making it difficult for your body to absorb these nutrients. That's why it's very important that we follow different simple steps when we process grains such as wheat berries, pink beans, lentils, you name it, just by simply soaking them. And you don't have to soak them like I do for a week. You can do that overnight and that's good enough. I like to put them through, like I said, through this semi-fermentation process because I like the benefits of eating fermented foods and all those great probiotics that I can get from putting these beans through a semi-fermentation process. But a couple hours or overnight is good enough. You don't have to go through all of this. But I do invite you to try this method. You don't have to make the amount of beans that I'm making. This process works with any amount of beans that you want to do. In fact, if it's just a couple of you in the house, you can do even half a cup of the dry garbanzo beans. Give it a try and come back and leave us your comment below the video. Let us know your thoughts. I really believe that we have to be a little bit more involved in our health and trying to live better lives. And this is just a simple way of doing that. To finish, I want to leave you with another way to soak your beans in case you want to try something different. In fact, based on my research, this method it's recommended by the CDC Prevention Unit, and that is to rinse your dry beans, add them to a pot with enough water to cover the beans, boil them for 2 to 3 minutes, remove the beans from the heat, cover them and keep them covered for 2 to 3 hours, and that's it. And then you can go ahead and use your garbanzo beans in your favorite recipe. I'm going to be making a garbanzo bean potaje, which is actually a garbanzo bean stew that I'll be making with some codfish, and I'm looking forward to trying that recipe. And if you would like to see a full video how to make that garbanzo potaje or garbanzo stew, let me know in the comments below, and I will be more than happy to share that recipe in an upcoming video. According to the CDC Prevention Unit, this method removes anywhere between 75 to 90% of the beans' indigestible starches, and that to me is very good news. So it does take a few minutes, whether you use this method or the recommended method by the CDC, one way or another, you're going to see some form of benefits by using either method to improve your overall health, and also to reduce the intake of all those unnecessary chemicals or agents that may be found on your dry bean. This method is foolproof and it works for just about any legume or grain that you use. For more practical tutorials like this one, consider subscribing to the channel, like, share, and comment for the YouTube algorithms, and activate the bell so you never miss out on any of my videos. And until next time, I'm Evita Cooks. Bon appetit! You really have to try it.